Entering the atmosphere in T minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Omega Metroid podcast from OmegaMetroid.com. My name is Andy Spiteri, reunited with my friend, my brother, my pal, Dakota Lasky. Dak, what's going on, man?
How's it going, man? I'm doing good. Doing good. It is, can't believe it's almost May right now. I was about to say it's April, but it's pretty much May at this point. But yeah, good to be back on the show. Good to be talking about some Metroid. We were just chatting it up about WrestleMania before the show. I know we're trying to watch AEW after this, so I always know that when we're going to do the show, it's not only talking about Metroid, it's also catching up on what's been going on in wrestling as well. So,
you know, I can't remember, and we'll get to Metroid in a second. I can't remember. Did we ever talk about Sting's last match? Did we talk about that?
No, but that was another match that I kind of wish I had went to.
Oh my God. That was I think that might be my favorite wrestling match I've ever watched. It was so
really of all time.
I think it might be. It's definitely up there, like a top 5. And I might just say, like, it was so awesome. I can't remember like losing my mind like a little schoolboy like that in like a long time. It was awesome.
Well, I was a big Sting fan growing up.
Yeah.
I dressed up for Sting. I dressed up as Sting for Halloween in kindergarten. And because I was a big WCW fan, I played the WCW games on N64. So I wouldn't say it was my favorite match of all time, but I will say that it was definitely one of the best retirement matches for a big star, I think. Way better than like Angle's last match, who was my personal GOAT.
Yeah.
But like Sting's also a GOAT of mine, and I think that was like one of the best like retirement matches you could get for him. So obviously they've been doing really. I mean, I think his whole run in AEW was really good as like a legend kind of run. Yeah. So really well done. Saw him take some bumps. I don't think I would ever see him take, which was awesome.
Sickening
I think putting him in tags.
bumps.
Yeah, really good stuff. But yeah, that was really awesome, and I was glad I at least got to watch it live, even if I wasn't there in person.
Yeah.
So yeah, great send off for him.
Yeah, it was unbelievable and a great feel good moment there. So, well, I'll tell you what, we're gonna have some feel good moments here today on this show. We are getting back into the world of Metroid after last week where we talked about Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. I thought that was one of our best episodes that we've done in a long time. Have you played The Lost Crown, Dak?
You know, I haven't. See, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see I have a little wheel and pedals behind me. I've been playing racing games a lot lately. In fact, I think just before this show, before we started recording, me and my roommate were playing our F1 2023 co-op campaign. So I've been like super into racing games lately. I haven't played anything. I haven't even been playing Destiny lately. Like I've been playing nothing else.
You know it's serious then.
Yeah, I've been locked in playing that stuff. So I haven't played the new Prince of Persia, but I do have the episode lined up to listen to while I play some more games tonight, so I can check it out. I mean, I already kind of figured that it's going to be a good game because y'all been talking it up.
Yeah. And
it's good to have some good 2D side scrollers to play every now and again. And it's on Switch and I believe on PC as well.
I think it's pretty much everywhere, yeah.
Yeah, so like I could play it on a multitude of different things, but haven't checked it out just yet. But I've heard it's really good. I've heard good things.
And there's a reason that you're practicing the racing games. I mean, not to give too much away, or some of those skills transfer from from one world to the other.
Well, it was reverse actually. So I mean, long story short, I've been in this go-kart league in like 40 minutes south of me, and I got into it because I went to a friend of mine's birthday. Back in November, we went to one of these things, and I was like, wow, that was really hype. And so I started doing it more, and I got into it a lot more. So I have like a helmet and all that stuff. And then because I was doing that more often, I only do it once a week. It's kind of expensive to go more than that because it's like go-karting. So when I'm not doing it once, on that week, on that one night of the week, I'm like, I wanted to race more. So I got into this, got pedals and whatnot. So it's been a nice change of pace from playing regular games. And then now I'm like, I want some new Metroid, so I actually booted up Remastered again, Metroid Prime Remastered this past weekend, because I wanted to start doing another hard mode 100% run. So I think it's all coming together. It's a nice little mix, because sometimes I'll like race like once an hour, and then I'll play a little. I'll spin my chair around and play Metroid Prime Remaster on the TV behind me, and then spin back around and race again, and sit at my wheel and pedals. So yeah, it's been fun.
It's funny. Sam and I were on a walk yesterday, and I don't know how we got to the topic, but we were just like, she's like, "When's Metroid Prime 4 coming out?" It's like, man,
I'm thinking about that all the time.
I've been thinking about that for the last 5 years of this podcast. So.
Not to hold us up on getting into the main topic here, but just kind of wild how time is flying, because now it's like, oh, I'm ready for some new fresh Metroid, which I think is kind of reasonable to think about, because Dread is coming up on 3 years.
Yeah.
This year, which is wild. It's 2.5 years old at this point, which I think is kind of crazy. Obviously, Metroid Prime Remaster has come out more recently than that, but I've been thinking, like, I'm ready for some new Metroid. I'm sick of the word like remake and remastered and redo and all that and re-release. As much as I say that, though, I can't wait for Paper Mario Thousand Year Door coming out on Switch. But I digress. I'm ready for some new Metroid, and I don't blame Sam. I'm ready for Metroid Prime 4. I want to hear about that.
There's one remake I would be actually very satisfied with, and that would be Hunters. If they remade that, I would be like really like pleased, because for me, I would like to re-experience that game. But generally speaking, yeah, I'm ready for Metroid 6. I'm ready for Metroid Prime 4. I'm ready.
Well, I'm going to hold my answer to that, because that's one of our questions, I think, tonight. So I figure
there we go.
If you're going to ask me, then I'll answer then.
Okay, well, so we did what we do best here. We made everybody work for us on the show. We asked you to submit your Metroid questions, and we had a few in the backlog as well. For anybody that doesn't know, one, we have a Discord where we would love for anybody listening to this to come and join and talk Metroid with us, and other stuff too, video games and life, everything like that. So come hang out with us in Discord. But in our Discord channel, we actually have an Ask Questions tab, and in that Ask Questions tab, we don't do Q&A episodes super often, so there's been a few building up there. So we thought, hey, nothing going on, we'll get a few more, and we'll make an entire show of it. So let's just get right to it. We started off with Twitter questions, so maybe we'll answer those first and then get into Discord here. And again, thank you to everybody that did submit questions, and this is good stuff, and I think we're gonna have a lot of great conversation.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, this is the time of year where I feel like I'm mostly like getting ready for some kind of news, where I feel like I don't know when I'm going to get news for some Metroid. We have no idea when it's going to come up, or even really big Metroid news or Nintendo news, actually. So yeah, I guess a Q&A episode makes a lot of sense for this time of year.
And
we
didn't have a direct in February like we typically do. We did have an indie direct, but that was pretty, even by indie direct standards, I felt anyways, it was pretty uneventful for me. But I'll tell you what, let's get to some of these questions, and then let's see what we can come up with here. So
all right,
let's get started. This is from our pal Count Blazemore, who happy 420 to you, brother. So he asks, do you want to play a prequel game / series in the Metroid universe where you could play as one of the Chozo? What would you want this to look like? So my immediate answer is, like, if it's a Metroid, I will play it like so. But this wouldn't be my first choice of a title. I think that as you're kind of fond of saying, Dak, like there's more stories to be told with Samus. 2, I do think that I want to push the series forward a little bit in terms of storytelling. And 3, I think if we were going to play as another character, I still kind of think that it would be kind of cool to play as pull like the Metal Gear Solid 2, like a different operative or something like that, to build up a new character. But that being said, this would be pretty cool, actually. It wouldn't be my first choice, but I also wouldn't be I wouldn't have the same reaction as I did when I saw Federation Force, for example, where I was like, what? Why are you making a game like this? So, yeah, it wouldn't be my first choice, but I do think that there's potential with that idea, for sure.
Yeah, when I think of like a Chozo prequel game, I think of it being kind of like a maybe third-person action adventure, like Jedi Survivor type of game, like playing as a Chozo warrior on some planet and whatnot. I think that would be a great opportunity to maybe introduce like a different kind of perspective, and maybe go back to like trying third-person in Metroid without people having like a really dramatic reaction to it, because it wouldn't be Samus. I think that could actually be a good way of trying it. I'm not entirely against it. Yeah, obviously, I think there's more Samus stories to be told. I would love the story to move forward. But when I kind of think of this, I'm like, oh, a Chozo prequel is almost like it would almost be like its own timeline, essentially. Like it would be so removed from in my head what like the active Metroid story is right now. Like it would almost be like time agnostic at that point. Like it wouldn't matter if it's a prequel or whatever. It would be its own kind of thing. Unless it was like tied into like the early games, which could be interesting. I'm not entirely against it, but yeah, I think my biggest thing is there's still so much more story to be told with Samus. When I think of like Zelda and Mario games, like look how many of those games those IPs have, and how many stories you get with those characters. I'm like, I want more of that for Metroid. So
Yeah.
I think there's like this is like a big shifting point in terms of like starting new stories with Samus. Like we just had, the end of a saga with the 2D series, so that kind of sets us up to move forward, like a blank slate almost in some ways. Metroid Prime kind of feels like it's in the same way as well, with like the original trilogy, being concluded for a while, and Metroid Prime 4 kind of feeling like it might be a little bit of a reboot or a kind of a fresh slate as well. So
Yeah.
on one hand, I think, yeah, totally fine. I think the coolest thing about that would be to try to maybe dig more into a new tribe that we don't know about, or some Chozos that aren't related to the ones we know now, like give us some more depth to the Chozo overall. But yeah, more Samus is probably where I'm leaning towards, but I wouldn't be against it.
No, I actually think I might have been a bit more excited for this before Metroid Dread, because like I remember when we saw the Chozo in Metroid Dread, it felt like a really big deal because it was like, wow, a living Chozo. And I think you sort of lose that effect now. So like if the game was about maybe why the Chozo disappeared, I think that'd be cool. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
It obviously depends on like the story and everything like that. But wouldn't be my first choice. But I think it has a lot of potential, definitely.
Well, that's the thing about it, is that like at least for me, the biggest appeal for the Chozo for the longest time, being a Metroid fan, was like the mystique behind it, and not really knowing what happened to them and how they really operate and whatnot. And now with Dread, obviously, a lot of that's been peeled back for better and for worse. So now, yeah, I agree. Like there isn't as much of like a shock factor of like learning so much new stuff, because we kind of got that big surprise in a lot of different ways in Dread. But I still think it would be interesting to look into things we hadn't seen in Dread, because there's still so much more to explore. So
definitely, and definitely more than one Chozo species that kind of disappeared, or Chozo tribe rather. This is from Kajiro. 2 different questions. Number 1. Kid Icarus Uprising and Star Fox Zero had anime shorts to promote their games. Would it have been cool if Metroid Dread got that treatment, like a 2D or a CGI short anime film focusing on Quiet Robe and Ravenbeak before the events of the game? Yeah.
Wait, I'm sorry. I lost you at the end of that question. So they're asking like, should there have been an animated thing for Dread to promote it?
That's right. So Star Fox Zero. I don't remember Kid Icarus Uprising, but I remember Star Fox Zero had
great. I do remember that game. Great game.
Well, no, I remember the game. I don't remember the the intro. So Star Fox Zero had this 19-minute movie that was produced. It was like an anime or whatever.
I didn't know that.
Movie is the wrong.
I don't remember that. Okay.
Well, it wasn't advertised really the way that you might expect, considering what I'm sure the amount of resources that went into making it, but. The basic gist of the question is like, should like basically this, like imagine if Metroid Dread had like a 20-minute animated teaser, and I think that would be awesome. It kind of reminds me of what they did with the Wii Shop channel slightly, where like those were really just a collection of trailers, but like if you kind of stitch those together to tell the story of like how Aurora became Mother Brain potential or whatever, right? Or like I think the gist of this question is like, maybe let's see what happened on ZDR when Ravenbeak got back. Like that I think could have been a very cool and engaging story. I guess like the only thing with that is you can't do that before the game comes out, because then you're giving away a bunch of pretty major plot points to the game. But I think in the spirit of the question, like something along those lines, or even if it released like concurrently, would be pretty sweet.
I like these kinds of questions. That's like, would you like this really awesome Metroid thing? I'm like, yeah, yes. The answer is yes, I would like that. Yeah, I would be down for some cool animated Metroid stuff for sure. I think the point of like, does it spoil some stuff? Like, would you want to give away, some of the game in favor of this? I think there's definitely a balance of that. I mean, we saw that with like the Kraid reveal, right? Like how Kraid was kind of showing off a little bit before the game was released, and there's kind of, was that a good thing or not? Like, does showing off Kraid bring in more people? Does, giving away that surprise, like, is there value there? So there's always going to be a positive and negative to it. I think because there's still like I think what they could have done actually is maybe gone to the Chozo memories and maybe done like an animated thing around that. So it
Yeah.
wasn't spoiling anything that we didn't already know if you were really tapped in. But for majority of people who, especially casual fans, probably have no idea what the Chozo memories are, it would have been a good way to kind of onboard people into that part of the story, which was like the salient part of what had happened in the previous parts of the saga, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think there's something done there. I think you could have done some really cool animated stuff, put it up on socials, like maybe chop it up into episodes or whatever. Yeah, there's all sorts of cool marketing things you could do to keep people kind of engaged. And I'm always of the camp of do something like that and make people leave them wanting more, you know?
Yeah,
Give them a little bit and be like, oh, I wish I got some more of that. So yeah, that would have been cool for sure.
I actually think that would work really effectively for Metroid Prime 4. What, assuming that we're going to be having kind of a new setting and a new world and world building and stuff like that. Like imagine with Metroid Fusion, which basically was like the new setting, new plot points, everything like that. If you had like a 20-minute intro, maybe detailing the Metroids and the X parasites and that attack on SR388, like that would be sweet when you see the X really kind of zap Samus of all of her powers. So same kind of idea to build and set the world for Metroid Prime 4 or you know what, even for Metroid 6, whatever that ends up being. So yeah, I think that'd be great. Like more stuff like that.
Well, like, you know how like Cyberpunk kind of came out alongside that TV show?
That TV show, yeah.
And I didn't see the show, so I don't know if it like how it ties into the game itself, but I think it would be really cool if before, as Metroid Prime 4 is about to come out, what if there was like an animated like series that like recaps the Metroid Prime trilogy that came out like around the time of Metroid Prime 4. So anyone who hadn't played the previous games can catch right back up. Could do it in a few episodes, I think, like cover all the games. Yeah, that would be super sick. I'm totally down for more content that like promotes the game, but also has like that evergreen value to it. Where like if you're just a general fan, you'll go and watch that again and again on YouTube or on Netflix or whatever too. So yeah, absolutely think that would be cool.
All right, this is from Dragon Soul. This question goes, do you think there's more interesting ways that the space jump boots could work in future Metroid Prime games? It essentially just served as a double jump in the OG trilogy. Perhaps they could be expanded to also work as some sort of mid-air dash or combat movement. Yeah, I definitely think that there's room to improve the space jump in Metroid Prime, because you're right, it is just a double jump and it doesn't feel, it doesn't feel as kind of special as it does in the 2D games, which obviously is a little bit different than what you can do in the Prime games. Maybe they do this. Maybe the space jump, you get it, and it's a double jump, but instead, I feel like I say this every single week, but instead of like a million missile expansions that are hidden around the world, perhaps they're space jump expansions, and then you go 3 jumps, and then you can go 4 jumps, and then you can go 5 jumps, and then you go 6 jumps, whatever, right? Like, make it so that you could just continually jump, and maybe that kind of serves it's more true to the spirit of what we think the actual space jump is and should be. And I guess you'd have to find a line of like how many space jump expansions, if any, are required, but I certainly think you could do that in a way where it's like you incentivize your player to go and get space jump expansions by making certain powerful items only available if you do. So that could be one thing off the top of my head I could think of. I know that just like extra jumps continually isn't like the most sexy thing, but I think that's more true to the spirit of the space jump. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think this is more so a question of like how can we make your gameplay of Metroid a little more customizable, not necessarily like how do we give more value to the space jump boots, because like at the end of the day, yeah, it's just a double jump. I like the idea of that, or as we talked about, like maybe a branching thing where you can go down for multiple jumps or longer range jumps, or the arc changes, or you can change trajectory a little better mid-air, you could float or something like I think that stuff is a little more interesting, because instead of just you're nominally upgrading, like, okay, this time I'm going to get 2 and then 3 and then 4. There's really no personalization to it. And I think it could be more fun, especially on when you're replaying the game, if you were able to go to an upgrade and be like, okay, can I modify it in this way or go down this branch or that branch to kind of make my gameplay, a little different each time without locking yourself too hard into it, I think. But yeah, I'm more so thinking like, how can we make the actual gameplay of controlling Samus more diverse, rather than do we give the space jump boots a third jump,
Well, and the other
which
thing too
on
that
paper isn't
we've
as
talked
exciting.
about is like let's just say let's go back to Metroid Prime 2 and 3 when you jump once, twice, and then a third time you enter third person mode and you do the screw attack. That you're just forced to do a straight line. Maybe there's a way where now you can like jump in either directions, right? Like because in the screw attack in the Prime Trilogy you have I think it's 5 jumps and you just go straight forward, which is okay. And I guess that's kind of like the same thing what I was proposing. But maybe when you enter third person mode, you have different like you just have control of Samus in that, and you can jump like you can jump left, right, up, down, whatever. Like maybe that could be a something that you do, and maybe you have a space jump gauge or something like that, where like the bigger your gauge, the more time you can spend in the air. I don't know.
I could see that when you eventually have like the screw attack, just like full 3D range of motion, but you can only be up there for a certain amount of time or
Yeah.
whatever it is.
I think that'd be fine. I do
That's
think
probably
that
what they'll end up doing.
yeah,
To be really
which is cool. I think it's a solution to the screw attack and the space jump there. So, yeah, I think that both of those would be fine ideas. Let's go on. This is from James Pittman. Do you think Super Metroid will ever be remastered, and should it? Personally, I think it's perfect already, but would love to hear your thoughts. Dak, what do you think?
Man, I feel like everyone's so remastered and remake pilled in their brain. Like let's ask for new and different and more maybe. I don't know. I'm so over like, do you want this game remade? Do you want no, I played it already. I played it hundreds of times. Like give me something new. Yeah, Super Metroid's really great. Do I need it remade? No. I would rather it be made more available, easily accessible. Like that's the like if a game is already great, like just make it more accessible to people, make it more easily available, cheaper to buy, all that kind of stuff. Would it be great to like vamp it, revamp it up and make it look really nice in HD? Yes, but on the other hand, I'd rather them just make a whole new 2D Metroid game that looks just as good and is new and fresh and has different stuff. Because as much as like you can put a whole new coat of paint on something, at the end of the day, you're still playing the same game. And like and look, like Metroid Prime Remaster is like my Super Metroid, right? And don't get me wrong, I love the game, but like I want to be playing Metroid Prime 4. I go back and play Metroid Prime Remaster, but it's the same Chozo Ruins I've walked through hundreds of times, and the same Talon Overworld I've walked through hundreds of times. So I'd rather just be more accessible and more cheap, more affordable, easily accessible in terms of playing it, and also in terms of being able to buy it and have it on a system. So that all said, yeah, obviously a Super Metroid remake would be really cool, would be awesome, but the game also looks great and looks cool, and I don't know if I'd necessarily want to see it looking just like Metroid Dread, like I love the pixel 2D art of Super Metroid that you don't really get these days, especially from Nintendo games, and I don't know, I kind of like it how it is, and maybe it doesn't necessarily need all of that, so I don't know. I would rather new games, especially for this series that like has done remakes and redos to death. Like, let's get some new stuff.
I agree, actually, which I might sound surprising because like obviously Super Metroid is my game, but I don't think it needs it. And actually, I'll answer the second part because I don't have much to add. What you already kind of succinctly said, Dak. I actually think that it's not going to get remastered. I don't.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that part. Yeah,
and the reason why, and I know that Super Mario RPG just came out, but like you kind of look at like the SNES catalog and like. Not many of those games have been remastered. Like some of them have been like ported. Like Super Mario World went on the Game Boy Advance, but like they never touched Link to the Past. They never touched Yoshi's Island. They never touched like Chrono. I guess Chrono Trigger's not there, but you know what I mean. Like the point is that a lot of those games kind of have stood the test of time, and I think aren't going to get like remade or remastered because really they don't need to. And like just by having Super Metroid on NSO, kind of tells me like no immediate necessity for remaking this game is required, because like if you want to play it, it's right there, it's still like it still looks great, it still sounds great, it still plays great. So I actually don't think that they would do that. I do think Metroid Fusion is probably on tap, but I don't think Super Metroid is.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's Nintendo. I could easily see them going back to the well for any number of reasons of just being like, oh, we could remake this for some money, let's profit off of it, so I could see it like down the line for the next system if Metroid's popping off or they want to maybe get some more consistent releases, fill in a year with a Super Metroid remake. That's, I think, a different thing. I don't know if the Super Metroid definitely needs it, but knowing Nintendo, I do think it's something that is I don't know how likely, but
always
not
possible.
unlikely. Yeah, but I don't think it's unlikely either. Like, I definitely think it's a non-zero chance, but I don't necessarily think it's a 1% chance either. I would say it's probably maybe a 20 to 30% chance, actually, that we see one.
Okay, how about this? This is from Drew Shoe 503. If you worked in the BSL station from Metroid Fusion, what sector would you want to work in?
These are the questions I want to get. We need more of these questions.
These are the questions I would need answers to. I think I have a section in mind. What about you?
Oh, this is none of them are good. So this is a hard one. I'm trying to like whittle them down.
Let me ask this. Does the main deck count as a sector?
No. It has to be one of the Yeah, you can't say the main
That was going to be my
answer.
That's
the obvious answer, yeah.
Because that's the only place with a break room that I see.
That's the only place that's hospitable. I would say you probably have to go... I would go with the nighttime one. Because
Sector 6, okay.
Yeah, Sector 6, I would say probably Sector 6, because... Like, all the other ones, except maybe Sector 4, are, like, inhospitable for, like, humans, you know?
Well, in Sector 4, I mean, so much of it's underwater, it might as well be inhospitable.
Yeah, but the parts that aren't are pretty chill.
Yeah. I think I would go Sector 1, just because it seems pretty nonchalant in a couple different ways, and it's a recreation of a planet. I guess a hostile planet, but...
It's humid, though. It is crazy humid in that area.
I mean, it would either have to be that or Sector 2. Like, I'm all about, like... I mean, yeah, there's poisonous plants or whatever, but, like, I don't know. I like me a nice planty atmosphere, so either Sector 1 or Sector 2, but I'd be trying to, like, sneak out, take some of those back exits to get to the main deck. Like,
I would go with Sector 6. That's a good question, though, because I think that's a great question. That one's the most tame, though. But yeah, like I like those more of those questions. Ultimately, I don't think any of us would survive.
No, definitely not. Well, from that question, let's go on to another one. This is from Overlord Kai, and there's actually two questions here. Number one, how do you feel about ROM hacks? I love them. They're great. They're kind of new Metroid, but kind of not new Metroid. So yeah, they're cool. And there's some really spectacular ones out there. Hey, and by the way, if you're interested, we have a whole series called ROM Hack Reviews, and a lot of those are now just on like the main podcast feed. So like, go and check out some of our thoughts on these ROM hacks. But yeah, spectacular people make these ROM hacks. It's unbelievable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, yes, they're cool. Go try them out.
And then the second question here, and I think that this one might have a factual answer, actually. Also, okay. What do you think about the orange, or what do you think the orange Phazon was about? So I'm assuming like the red-orange Phazon that's an impact crater or whatnot. Mm-hmm. I believe that was just like a concentrated version of Phazon, was it not? Like I think it was like more or less the same thing, but just a more concentrated version of it. I'm pretty sure that was the explanation.
Yeah, I thought that was... I mean, I was just quickly looking it back up. It reminds me of the orange gunk from Super Mario Sunshine. That's what I was thinking of immediately. But yeah, the game reason is we need a level of Phazon that can still damage Samus while she's able to interact with regular Phazon. In kayfabe, as far as I'm aware, it's just highly concentrated because it's coming from it's close to the source.
That's right.
You know, so.
When it gets really far away, instead of blue, it turns like green or something.
Well, I mean, that could be. I mean, that's not necessarily out of realm of you know. Yeah, because Phazon went inert in the universe wirelessly when things went down in Metroid Prime 3.
It turns yellow, and somebody just named it Aeon instead, not knowing what it was. I mean, that could be something too, because they did say that Aeon had a part, at least inferred, had a part in the creation of the Metroid. So. Who knows?
I think that's something interesting to explore a little bit about what's going on with that.
Yeah.
Connection.
What a great question to end our Twitter Q&A on before we get into Discord here. This is a fantastic question. This is from Chris06. How does the nearly decade-long wait for Metroid Prime 4 feel so far?
I would say this. I would say the first few years, I think, were probably worse because I knew Metroid Prime 4 was a thing. Because before that, it wasn't like Metroid Dread where, it was a thing and then it wasn't. We waited around if it would ever be a thing. Metroid Prime 4, long stretch of no idea if it's a thing until it was actually announced. So I think now it's been so long, like I'm just kind of numb to it. There's so many other great games to play. Like there's so many other things to enjoy and experience in life. Like for me to, worry about when's Metroid Prime 4 going to come out. Like it'll come out when it comes out and I'll enjoy it, all the same. So
Hmm.
I think as time goes on, the wait gets easier because I'm finding new things to enjoy, which I think is better because then when Metroid Prime 4 finally does come around, I'll be fresh and ready to go and like excited and amped for it instead of having, beating myself up about it because I'm like, oh, when's this game coming out every day and like waiting and waiting and waiting. Like just go, and there's so many other things to experience and other games to enjoy and all that stuff. So I think the wait's been getting easier and easier. Also knowing that like, or at least hoping that like it comes out on the next new stronger
Right.
console is a big thing for me because for a while I was like, oh, this is coming out on the Switch. This thing's gonna run at 30 frames per second. Now I'm like, oh, it might come out on the nicer system and be, have good performance and be fun to play on the Switch or whatever it is, Switch 2. So yeah, I'm actually, I don't know about you, Andy, but I think it's getting easier as time goes on.
I sort of agree, but I sort of disagree as well. Like at at the very beginning when the game was announced, I think Reggie Fils-Aimé was like, "Listen, the game's a long ways away. We only announced it just to let Metroid fans know that like we're working on it because we made exception basically. We don't usually announce games this far out, but." And I was like, "Okay, that's cool. Like no problem. I can wait. No worries." And I kind of thought that it was going to be a long ways out. And then when that redevelopment, like the whole thing happened, again, I was like, you know what? I at least appreciate that Nintendo is letting us know that there's a reason why it's going to be even longer. So then I was like, okay, no worries. I will say, I think the last 6 months, though, has been kind of, maybe even like the last like 9 months. Then I've just been like, all right, like I think it's time to see something. And that's probably tied to what you were saying. Like, I think it's very clear that this game is going to be on the Switch too. I'm antsy for the Switch too because like you said, like there's a lot of other great games to play, and I mostly I'm a game player on the Switch now, right? So like when I'm looking at
Yeah.
my Switch, I'm like, actually there's not like a lot of other great games coming up for the Switch in the future. In fact, there's like nothing beyond Paper Mario. So it's like and like I've got a ton of games like
Yeah, look at
I've
that
been
behind you,
promising
bro.
I've been promising Doom. I'm gonna play Doom Eternal for like the last 3 years, but like so I've got a ton of stuff I can play, but I'm sitting here just being like, there's nothing on my Switch, so that means like the Switch 2 has got to be close, which means I would think Metroid Prime 4 has got to be close. So like the last 6 months, I'm like, all right, like I think I'm ready to see Metroid Prime 4. But if I was being honest, I think I'm more antsy to see the Switch 2 than Metroid Prime 4 at this point. I just kind of think that they're going to go like hand in hand.
Yeah, I guess I'm at just a different stage of my life in terms of being a gamer, Like I really only use my Switch to play Smash and like the occasional obviously Metroid, Mario Kart. I primarily game on my PC. So for me it's like, when the Switch 2 comes out, it
Hmm.
comes out. I'm pretty much buying it for Smash and for Metroid at this point. I'm waiting for Metroid Prime 4 to come out. So yeah, it's weird because I wish they had almost like I wish the situation was reversed, whereas I wish they had like let us know about Metroid Dread earlier. I think because Metroid Dread was uncertain for years, whereas
Hmm.
I was good being oblivious to the fact that Metroid Prime 4 might exist or not. They should
Yeah.
have never said anything and just left it because I was like, okay, Metroid Prime was great, that trilogy was great, it was a thing, it happened, and my expectations were never that we were going to get any more than that. Whereas Dread, I was always hoping like, oh, there has to have been something that we could finally get. So I wish it would have been like reversed. Like I wish we kind of known about Dread like a little earlier, so I could have like been stewing on it a little longer as Prime
Yeah.
4. Like I shouldn't know about it now. Prime 4. I should be oblivious to Prime 4 right now because we've gotten nowhere with it. I've seen nothing. It would have been so much cooler if like the Switch 2 was announced and then Metroid Prime 4 was announced with it with no surprise, having not known it was in
Yeah.
development at all. Would have been so much cooler than what we have now.
And
So
I think like clearly in hindsight, that would have been the play is to not and but like I get why they announced it. You know what I mean? Like and I appreciated that. So it wasn't that.
I
I think like in
guess,
hindsight though, like yeah, of course it would have been better to save that and then like surprise you with
but
you
that's why
know
I just That's why I disagree, though, is because I felt like there wasn't ever an expectation of more Metroid Prime, so they didn't need to ever tell us, like they didn't need to announce it to us.
Yeah.
I don't know about, maybe not you, but I didn't expect we were going to get another Metroid Prime. I really didn't. So like they didn't have to tell them. They didn't have to tell me, unless they should have waited. Obviously, in hindsight, they should have waited when they had something ready. But like for me, and maybe I felt, maybe I'm wrong, but I always felt the majority of people never expected to get more Metroid Prime. It was great back then. Nintendo's not going to go back for whatever reason, or it's not going to get more. So I never had that expectation year to year of like, what's going on with Metroid Prime? What's happening? Now I do because they told me about it, but they didn't have to. There was never that expectation that they had to talk about like there was for Dread.
Like I see what you're saying. I always thought that there probably would be another Metroid Prime game at some point. And I think, like, if they had not announced Federation Force, like a Metroid Prime Federation Force game, I wonder if they would have felt the need to say that about Metroid Prime 4, because, like, the reaction to that was so horrible. And I remember,
it was only a year later.
Yeah. Like, my reaction was like, God, this stinks. And at the time, when they announced it, there was no Samus Returns, there's no Metroid Dread, so it's just like, is this series, like, dead and gone? And so, like, that's why I appreciated that announcement. I think, like, obviously, clearly in hindsight, though, they potentially could have kept that a secret. And
no, I think you're actually on the money there. Like when you put it into that context, which I wasn't. No, I think you're right. Like at the time, yes, Federation Force was such a dud, and there was nothing else on the horizon that, like, Metroid Prime 4 just existing was good news to give to people.
Like,
so
really.
that's and it was. I do remember it being, because at that point I had no faith in Metroid, I had no faith in Nintendo at all. So I guess at the time it was welcome.
Those are the darkest. I mean, I've been a Nintendo fan all my life almost, and those are the darkest days being a Nintendo fan I can ever remember. That Wii U era was just miserable.
Yeah,
like miserable.
Yeah,
which is funny, actually. To go on a little bit of a tangent here, but like, kind of like how we see people romanticizing Other M a little bit now that enough time has passed. You kind of see it about the Wii U in that era too, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I lived through that era and it sucked. It sucked.
But like that's I think how everything goes, because like for some people they grew up with that, Like I think about it with wrestling, like, when I grew up with wrestling, that was the obvious best stuff. But some people grew up with like the crappy late 2000s, early 2010s wrestling, and they thought that was the best. But me watching it, I'm like, this sucks. So like people who grew up as like the Wii U was their first console or their second console or something like that, they might not see it that way, which I totally understand.
I'm jealous of that, because I wish that I actually had that.
I'm definitely not jealous of that at all. I'm so glad the Wii U was not my first console. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm so glad the N64 was. But
let me rephrase that. I'm jealous of the fact that somebody can look at that time and come away with happy thoughts and happy memories and stuff.
Well, I mean,
it was a tough time.
I mean, let's we're talking about video games here. It's not like we didn't go through like a war or anything. It wasn't that awful.
But like, in the context of what we're talking about, that was a rough time to be a Nintendo fan.
I think it was more so like I can still look back and see the positives of it. But yes, I'm not defending it. I'm just saying that, like, it wasn't horrible. I think it wasn't great though.
Well, it wasn't. Especially if you were a Metroid fan, that was a rough patch. If you were a Metroid fan in particular.
Yeah. I don't know what I'm defending here. I still remember when the Wii U got announced at E3 2014. I'm like, is it just the controller? Is it the where's the system?
I can't wait for the Switch U. I can't wait.
It was not. Yeah, it was not good. That was definitely what I think that era of Nintendo was kind of what made me start to PC game a bit more and branch out a bit and feel like, what else? There has to be something better. I can't play only the Wii U. Like, this is awful. So you're totally right. Yeah, it was. I am definitely a little envious of people who can look back at that time and
and hey,
see it fondly.
That's awesome if that's you. So that's your prerogative. Let's go to Discord. We got some questions that have been building up for the last couple of months. We're probably not going to get to them all, but we'll try and get to as many as we can.
See what we got.
This is from Harkyman. This is a great question, and a question I think that's been around for a long time. Not intending to cast any shade on AM2R, but do you think Samus Returns might have sold more, had more of an impact in the gaming community if AM2R had not been developed? I don't think so. No, I really don't.
The type of person who's going to play AM2R also bought Samus Returns.
Yeah, 100%.
Full stop. Like no one, the casual gamer who wasn't checking out Metroid has no idea what AM2R is,
Yeah.
which is a shame because it's a great game. Yeah, no, had no. I don't think it had any effect whatsoever. It was a nice extra. It was like 2 cakes instead of 1 cake for a Metroid fan at the time.
Yeah.
But for anyone else, like they were gonna buy Samus Returns already, or they weren't.
The only thing the reason why Samus Returns didn't sell very well is because they stuck it on the 3DS after the Switch had launched. I mean, that's the reason.
I think there's a lot of reasons why it didn't sell well, but that was the main one. Yeah, I agree.
All right. What quality of life improvements do you think Nintendo should implement if they roll out a Samus Returns remaster? I'm fixated
Some of the Samus Returns questions.
Yeah, I'm fixated on actual meaningful place names for each sector. That's not a quality of life thing, but like I would agree with that. I hate that they're just called Area 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever. That's not a quality of life for. I mean, I don't expect
That's quality of life. That's kind of quality of life, I would say.
Yeah, well, I
it's
hope
helping
they do
your
it.
understanding of the game. I think it's quality of life.
I think so. I'm getting pretty close. 3 years ago, I made a message that said Samus Returns is going to come to the Switch, and to bug me again in 3 years. I think that was in August. So
it's not happening, buddy.
Listen,
it's not happening. It's not.
If it does happen, I don't think that there's going to be any quality of life improvements. Like I don't really know what you improve. I mean, like functionally, like the game that it is, it's great. Like it plays great. I mean, I guess you could add the slide, but you'd have to kind of restructure a lot of the game then if you were to do that. I don't know. I don't know that it would get quality of life, I guess, improvements, because I think if the game is coming, it's going to be like more of like a port than like a remaster, you know?
I just think the question is funny because it's like, when are we going to get the remaster of the remake of the game? Like, people, please, let's ask for new stuff. Stop. Like, please, oh my God, how many questions are we going to get about remakes and remasters? I'm sick of it. No offense to whoever asked that, but I just think it's very funny when we're sitting here thinking about if Samus Returns gets like it's already a remake and remaster. It already was remastered. We don't need to remaster the remaster. Oh my God, I'm sorry. I think quality of, to answer the question, I think I remember correctly. Samus Returns, you couldn't move and aim, right?
Yeah, that's right. Actually, that's true.
Change that. Make it so you can move and aim. That's what I would. That's what I would change. I would change the area names. Sure. Other than that, leave it. It's fine.
Yeah.
Port it to the system if people want to buy it. Don't put any resources into updating the game. Anything more than that, it is not necessary as far as I'm concerned.
I think that you could always do quality of life improvements, but like they would be so, I don't want to say like trivial, but like
maybe improve the map or something. Yeah. I just
the amount like you could take Samus Returns and put it on 3DS, NSO, or whatever, and it's perfectly fine. Like
I agree. 100% agree.
Yeah,
100% agree.
All right, Harkyman has another question here. Do you think Nintendo would ever consider rebranding the series to engage a broader fan base? Example, the Samus Aran series or Samus Aran series. Not at this point, no.
Oh wait, are they asking to rename the series to the Samus Aran series? Why would that make that? Why would that be more broader appeal?
I mean,
just a thought experiment. Like, how do you think that would realistically bring in? Like, do you think the people who have not played Metroid now are suddenly going to play it because it's called Samus Aran, the game? You know, like I don't see the.
I don't think that it's like a completely ridiculous question because
I'm not saying it's ridiculous. I'm just trying.
Well, no, or notion like, either. Like, let me throw this at you because I've actually suggested this before. Like, potentially, let's pretend that they were to make a new F-Zero game. What name has more cachet, F-Zero or Captain Falcon? Like, I think you could argue that it's pretty similar because, like, 30 million people have played Smash Bros. And I like the latest Smash Bros. And I don't think 30 million people have played any F-Zero game combined by sales, like, at all, right? So, like...
No, but people would buy the game by seeing Captain Falcon, not necessarily seeing his name. I think the name F-Zero is cool... to call, I don't know. I'm against
so do
this
I.
whole, like,
I guess
call the series by the name of the character thing.
Yeah, and like
I don't see the value in it.
Well, I guess like the value is right. Like and I guess that argument kind of goes out the window a little bit too, because I was going to say like a lot of your big series are named like after your big character, but Pokemon isn't, Zelda isn't. You know, obviously
Minecraft is not.
But
Fortnite is not. Roblox is not.
Like, I think if
Animal
you're like
Crossing is not.
yeah, but like I go back to F-Zero. Like, I think if you released a game called like Captain Falcon Adventures or like whatever it's gonna be,
Awful.
whatever.
Awful. That would decrease sales.
I
I'm
don't
sorry.
I don't
F-Zero
know.
sounds like a cool name. I don't think it's a good apt comparison because there aren't any modern F-Zero games. You don't know.
Well, and that's
You
the
have no
thing,
idea.
right? Like, I think that Metroid has more of a built-in cached name than F-Zero does. But the spirit of the question, like, if you were to make that argument about F-Zero, I could have a lot of time for that argument. Like, I think that's fair. Even if, like, well, never mind. I was gonna say Kid Icarus, but that's not like I don't think you're gonna put a game.
I don't
up
think
that says,
that.
like,
I don't think that. I mean, my ultimate thing is I don't think the name of the series has really anything to do with its performance. I think it's entirely the marketing and the genre. Ultimately, like Metroid is it's like sci-fi, and it's not like high fantasy sci-fi that has a casual appeal, kind of like Star Wars. It's more darker, not like like grounded sci-fi, but it's heavier sci-fi in some ways. It's not like, you know, leaning towards kids-ish, and it's not doesn't have that broader appeal just by the content of the games. I don't think changing the name makes a difference. But to be really honest, again, you really don't have a good constant because, like, has Nintendo ever really tried to really market the Metroid series as it is? No. If they really tried to market Metroid like they did Mario or Zelda or Animal Crossing, and then it didn't work, then I could be like, okay, you might have a shot there. Maybe you do change. You call it the Samus Aran story or whatever. I still don't think that changed anything. Like, I don't think calling Halo the Master Chief Adventure would make people buy more Halo games. Like, I think if you were to make a new F-Zero game, you plaster Captain Falcon all over it, absolutely. But I don't think there's any value in calling it the Captain and Falcon Adventures. If anything,
like,
I think
I'm trying to think of a different compare. F-Zero is the only one I can think of that I would maybe have time for that argument for.
I just don't see like what problem is being solved really by just changing the name. Like, Samus is already the main figure. Like, has Zelda stopped selling because people confused Link as being Zelda and vice versa? No. If anything, I feel like it's made it more of a thing. And in Metroid, that's been a meme as well. So I don't know.
And I guess I would say this too. Like, I do think that Smash, because that's really the spirit of the question. Like, do more people know this character from Smash Bros. Or from the game series that they're from? I think that Smash does a pretty decent job of, like, also, like, educating people, like, where these characters come from and, like, what game they came from. And I don't remember which Smash it was, but, like, one of them had, like, demos of all the games that they came from. Like, you could play Ocarina of Time. Brawl, yeah. Like, that was pretty sweet. And,
that
like,
was cool.
A really cool idea. So I don't, specific to Metroid's case, like, no, I don't think there's any value in that. There's always more ways that you can up the, you know, the appeal and everything like that, and to make Samus and Metroid a bigger household name. But at this stage of the game for this series, certainly not. I don't think. All right, let's get to. Actually, I'm gonna answer one more quick question from Harkyman. They ask, if Nintendo pulled an F-Zero 99 with the Metroid series, what sort of gimmick would you love to see? We actually did a whole episode on that back in
I was gonna say.
So go check that out. I want to say it was like around 151, somewhere in there. So we have a whole episode, and you should go check that out.
But real quick though, I mean, off the top of my head, I feel like the obvious ones were like surviving the Emmy room, speedrunning the SAX, that kind of stuff, where you have like a big like smash run type of mode, and everyone's trying to run away from things and stall each other out, or just do a straight up speedrunning gimmick or something like that. Cool ideas you could do.
Okay, this is we kind of touched on this before too, but let's just really quickly touch on it. And I think I know your answer, Dak. Gift of the Universe asks, do you think it's time for a new protagonist with a fresh new story, but obviously still follows the same mechanics as the Metroid we know and love?
We gotta start filtering out these questions for ones we've answered before here, man. Look, at the end of the day, I'm always down for a game that's fun, or if there's changes to the story, if the story makes sense and it's fun and it's exciting or compelling or whatever. So, like, if you present me with a new Metroid game that has a new protagonist and it's fun or the story's exciting, blah, blah, I'm in. But as I was answering that question earlier, there's so much more story to tell with Samus. It's another one of those things where I don't see what the problem is that's trying to be solved here. Samus is a fine character that still has a lot more to go in terms of character development and growth. We just saw a bunch of character development and growth in Dread. I would hate to just throw that all away for a new character, to be quite honest with you. So, as a Metroid fan, I would rather just let's stick with Samus. There's still much more to do. As a general, just gaming fan, if you give me a good game, I'll enjoy it. But there's still much more to do with Samus.
I'm much more open to the idea, but like if it's done well, and I wouldn't want Samus to not be in the game. Like I always go back to Metal Gear Solid 2, Halo 2. I think those games did a really cool job of like introducing not even like alternate protagonists, because you did get to play, and I wouldn't want to not play as Samus in this game either. And even Castlevania's done that in its history too, where like instead of playing as Alucard, you play as like someone else, right? Like Richter or whatever. So I think you could do that. I think it would be cool.
We've talked about cool. That being like a Metroid Prime 4 thing of like Samus and Sylix kind of acting in that dual role. Like that could be interesting. So
I think it'd be really cool. Okay, let's go to a question from New Supreme Man, and we're gonna do a few more, and then we'll bounce on out of here. But New Supreme Man, great question by the way. Now being over 2.5 years out from the release of Metroid Dread, how do you feel about Dread's sales potential at a lower price of $40 to $50 compared to the $60 that it was sold for? Assuming that marketing is exactly the same, do you think Dread would sell better or the same? If better, how much better? I think it's probably fair to assume if the game was cheaper, it would probably have sold better. I don't know how much better, but I would say this. However much more the game would have sold at a lower selling price, I think that it's pretty much a wash when you compare it to the amount that Dread did sell at the higher price, right? Like I think you're making more money by selling 3 million units at $60 than you would be from selling 4 million units at $40, or it's probably about the same, right? So that would be my answer to that.
I agree. I feel like it's ultimately a wash. The people that were going to buy the game are going to buy it at 40 or 60, and the people who like the small amount of people that extra bought it because it might have been $40, I think it would have been around the same had those people not bought it, but everyone else paid another $20. So I think it would have been a wash. Like Dread, for what it's worth, Dread sold well.
Yeah,
I think like there are some games who don't even break 1 million units sold or concurrent players ever. Like to sell 1 million units, like just wrap your head around selling 1 million of something. Obviously, Nintendo is a big company, billions of dollars, blah, 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 should be able to do that. But like, it's a lot for one of Nintendo's like B-level franchises. Like that's not a bad selling point. Like think of like the online discourse around Xenoblade or Fire Emblem, how like voracious it is, like how and those games sell about what Dread sold, It's just those people, like that fandom is just that much more vocal online. But you would think it sold millions of copies based on how people talk about it and whatnot online. So I think maybe I wouldn't worry about so much how much Dread sold. $40 or $60. I think Metroid Prime Remastered sold at 40 because it was like a remaster and it was kind of a smaller game, and maybe people wouldn't have bought in because, like, unlike Dread, it's not a modern game in its genre. So maybe making it a cheaper game could help people dive into it because it's not what they're used to. Dread was made to be a more modern game. They sold it in that kind of way. I don't think it really would have mattered. Dread sold well for what it is. Probably would have been about the same either way.
Yeah, I think so too. All right, let's skip ahead here. We're going to answer a question from Awesome Hat. What do you guys enjoy about playing the Prime games on hard difficulty? I personally find the combat to be the most boring part of the games with how basic it is, and would rather play on easier difficulty to get enemy encounters over with faster. This is a question for you right now, since you're doing another 100% run of Metroid Prime Remastered deck.
Well, I think just the other difficulties of the game are too easy for me. That's the kind of the biggest thing. I've said this on the show before. I wish there was a difficulty harder than hard that I could play on, but there isn't. So that's one thing. It's just, I think, just the more engaging in terms of difficulty. The other ones are not engaging at all. Other than that, I think it's just more of a test of. I like the challenge of the test of stamina and endurance and whatnot. I also come from someone who I like, playing Destiny. I don't have a problem with kind of bullet spongy bosses or ones that take a little time to work through them. I think that's kind of part of the enjoyment is like, how long can I, do this and work through it? But yeah, I think it's more so just the difficulty's higher than easier. The easier stuff is kind of just too
It's too
easy. And
easy.
when you melt through stuff in that way, it's not really that fun. Whereas the higher difficulty, like, yeah, okay, the combat's not like super strategic, but at least it gives you a little bit of pushback where you can't mindlessly do it entirely as you go through. And just a
Yeah.
little bit of extra edge and challenge. So that's why I like it.
I would agree, although I do think that there's room for a better hard mode in the future for sure. I think we'd all probably
100%.
agree with that. Now, you know what? I'm kind of with you. Like combat, I like combat, but it's not what I'm there for, right? Like it's not my number one draw. But I will say this to kind of piggyback what you were saying, Dak. Like I've often talked about Metroid Zero Mission, and I've talked about that Ridley fight, and it's so easy that it's really disappointing. It kind of feels anticlimactic, which is not what you want like a Ridley fight to be, and it's not what you want your final boss fight to be in Metroid Prime 4 or Metroid Prime Remastered or whatever. So it just kind of gives it a little bit more stakes, right? Because if you go in and you know that you're going to steamroll over the boss, then like I don't know, it's not as rewarding. Like for me, the boss fights that I really remember, like my heart's pounding. I'm like, oh my god, I might not make this, or like maybe, or
Yeah.
like I don't know.
You're trying to make it to the end. You're not
Yeah.
just necessarily trying to pull up. You're trying to get across the finish line. I 100% agree. I might also looking at it from like a non-boss combat perspective as well. You play on the other difficulties, you can literally ignore and just run by stuff. And that to me is not fun. Like, okay, like
Mhm.
maybe some people might find that to be more fun or like they don't care. Like that's cool. But for me, like I like that at least I gotta fire back and I can't just run by stuff. I gotta at least take a couple shots and do a little deacon, a little, moving around a little bit to get some shots off here and there. Testing me a little bit so I can't just walk through the game and get it done without, much pushback, without much resistance. So
Yeah. Yeah, like I also like I think Zero Mission did this as well, where like they limit the amount of expansions or how many expansions like the missiles give you. Actually, I think that's a good thing for hard mode to do, and like look at Dread mode, like that completely changes the way that you play that game too. So I think that there's a lot of value in that. Like it's not just about combat; it's also about pacing, it's about strategizing, and it's about like planning. So it a good hard mode is definitely worth it. But
yeah.
I think the question was about Prime games specifically. I think they could implement some of that stuff going forward as well. Let's end on this question here, Dak. We kind of touched on it at the very beginning, so it's fitting that we end on this.
Oh,
This
right,
is,
yeah.
This is from Big Griff. Shout out
Big
to you,
Griff.
Big Griff. I'm sorry, by the way, Griff, we're not going to get to all your questions, but we're putting them in the bank for the next show. Griff has been on a bit of a Metroid Prime Hunters binge recently, and it has a few questions here. What would be more likely, a Hunters port or Prime 1 style remaster, or a full-blown remake? And if a remake ever happened, what would you most like to see, and what can be improved? I'm going to paraphrase the question to its basic gist there. Would it be appropriate to say like something in the middle, not like a full remaster like Metroid Prime got, but maybe something a little bit more detailed than just like porting the game over? I don't think it would actually. I can't see it happening really. I think if anything, realistically, it's probably like Nintendo DS games are available on NSO. Here you go, you can play them. But yeah, like I don't think it would happen. It would be great if it did. And I think like at least for me, and I dare say for probably a lot of people, just fix the controls. Like give us the option to have dual analog controls, and that's pretty much. I mean, like it's pretty much all that I'm asking for, right? Because like I have big fat fingers and hands or whatever. Like I try and hold my DS in my stylus, and like it's small, and my hands get cramped, and I'm like, man, I'd be dying for some dual analog action. And I think that if this game ever did get ported, that's exactly what would happen. Like I think it would, know, you'd see the exact same thing as Metroid Prime Remastered. You'd have your tank, your motion, your dual. Like I think all of that would happen.
Yep. No, I 100% agree. I think most likely would get like a port. I still think like the remastered thing for Metroid Prime happened because they were working on eventually building to Metroid Prime 4, yeah, which is probably why we're not going to see the same treatment for like 2 and 3 either, as well as Hunters. So yeah, I think a port where you just update the controls, maybe add more customization, maybe allow for more players in a lobby instead of like just 4.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe add like customizable maps or a map editor or something like that. Otherwise, yeah, I think I could see a port. If I was really at the helm of all of this, I wouldn't even bother. I would just take the Hunters multiplayer experience and adapt it for Metroid Prime 4 and put it into all one,
Yeah.
one thing. Take what the best part of Hunters, take the best part of the main Metroid Prime series and put them together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't think doing it separately makes sense anymore. And you don't really need the Metroid Prime Hunters campaign experience. Like, it was okay, and it was really kind of just there, so that way it didn't feel like a Metroid multiplayer only game. But
Yeah.
I would rather like the full Metroid Prime 4 campaign and then bring the Metroid Hunters multiplayer experience to that in one big package, and honestly just make a whole new thing. So I wouldn't even port or remake it. But yeah, if we were going to, I would just take the port, update the controls, make it a little bigger in terms of lobby size, maybe add replays, stuff like that.
You know what? One more thing too. Actually, I would make the boss fights against the other hunters feel grander, like because a lot of times those boss encounters, like you're doing your thing, and all of a sudden, like, oh man, there's a hunter, and like now you gotta brawl. Where you kind of contrast that to some of the bounty hunter fights in Metro Prime 3. Those are very cinematic and really kind of played to the strength of that particular hunter. I think they could probably do a better job of that too. That does mean that those fights have to be more like regimented in when they're going to happen in the game. But I think that's a good trade-off. Actually, I would personally like to see that.
I don't know. Because I actually think that whole like a hunter could show up at any time, kind of like a legendary dog Pokemon, or like the BioShock 2, situations.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really cool and unique of hunters. That's something that if I would like to preserve maybe for upcoming stuff. Like maybe Metro Prime 4, that's a thing where silence can come up at any time. Like I love that like random element of like you're in the middle of something and then all of a sudden the stakes are amplified because this random roaming character shows up and kind of throws a wrench into the mix.
Mm-hmm.
I really like that, and I would hate to lose that just by having them become more standard boss type characters that have a scripted entrance and sequence you engage them with. I think it's kind of fun where you're in the campaign, you got a boss fight, or you're in the middle of a puzzle or something, and all of a sudden Hunter shows up and you got to deal with it. That appeal is already kind of there with Ridley as a boss character, where you're in the middle of something, you're trying to get something done, and boom, Ridley right there shows up, messes things up, and that kind of needing to adapt on the fly, I think, is fun, and I would love for that mechanic to come back either in a remake or in a future Metroid Prime game.
Yeah, like I think that's fair. I would have probably personally rather had like stage boss, but I wonder if there's a way that you could do both. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
I'm sure you
have
could
the
do
best
both.
of both worlds. I
Yeah.
don't know what that would look like, but even if the hunters could show up randomly, but maybe like when they showed up, this isn't an exact science, of course, but like almost like if you're playing a JRPG where like you have someone show up, like you go into your battle mode or whatever, and then you could have your big attacks or whatever. Like not exactly the same clearly, but like maybe the hunter shows up and it's like, okay, all of a sudden, like I don't know, somebody, let's just pretend that like Rundus is a hunter in this game. He shows up and like he's blasting the whole arena full of ice, and now like you got to concentrate on Rundus. Like that would be the type of maybe thing I was looking for.
No, see, I think it's way more interesting if you're in the boss fight and then Rundus shows up and you now have two boss fights you got to deal with, and you still have cool. the objective of the boss, but you have to take out Rundus because they're in there. I think it would be way cooler instead of having to separate them.
I don't know why I was thinking of Rundus, by the way. I was trying to think of anyone of the hunters in the game who uses ice.
You can bring Rundus back.
Anyone...
Oh, you're thinking of you're thinking of Noxus.
Noxus,
right?
I was like, does he use ice? I can't remember.
Yeah.
Anyway, the point is, like, yeah, I think it'd be cool, and you know what? I actually think that'd be awesome if like it's like WrestleMania 31, like it's all of a sudden a triple threat match.
Just
like,
cash in. Yeah, someone just comes. That's I think the appeal. And that's cool. Something I think the series should lean into. What are all these other hunters doing? Why is that Samus is the only one on these hunter missions getting these bounties? Like there should be other hunters vying for the same purse, vying for that prize money for the bounty. I think that's a really cool thing that could be worked into, especially a bigger game like Metroid Prime 4, to have these kind of random engagements that make the game that much more exciting, because you never know, like you gotta kind of, do I hold on to these resources going into this boss fight knowing that Silex might show up at any time and require me to have some extra firepower? Do I chase them down and disengage from the boss, or do I keep fighting the boss and hope to survive? Like that kind of stuff, that kind of emergent gameplay, I think would be really cool and unique for Metroid that I would love for them to explore.
Yeah, you know what? Okay. You might have won me over actually to that point. I think if you could find a way to do a little bit of both, that would be ideal.
Like,
and I'm sure you could.
I mean, you could do like a bunch of that. Like maybe there's a hunter you fight a bunch of times, then after the sixth time, it becomes an actual boss on the map you got to take down or something, something like that.
Yeah, or maybe they show up like each boss has like a final battle where like that's your scripted battle that you fight them,
like a last stand or something.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. There we go. Thank you so much to everyone for all the questions. I'm sorry we didn't get to them all, but we like to save a few and put them in our back pocket for when we are in need of a few minutes of time on the show. So eventually we'll end up getting to all of them. But thank you so much for all of the awesome questions. I loved kind of doing the thought experiment here and talking about those. So shout out to everybody that asked, and we appreciate you for doing it. That's it. We're out of here. What you got going on the rest of the week here, Dak?
I was gonna say real quick. Also, thanks to everyone doing the questions. Definitely like the questions that get us to think a little bit more. Less on the questions about remakes and remasters, please. I don't want to answer another question about Super Metroid remake or Metroid Fusion remake until they come out. How about that? That's the rule. Other than that. Hey man, I just living life. Looking forward to that next Metroid news drop. Looking forward to these upcoming episodes. I know we got some more in the pipeline, which is cool. Otherwise, waiting for my spring allergies to go away.
Oh, mine have. Yeah, I was gonna say mine have started already. It was like they're here.
Like I'm already over it.
All right. Well, you know what? I won't be here next week. I'm gonna leave it up to you guys. So I'll see you guys in 2 weeks here. But I'll tell you what. In the meantime, you can check us out over on Twitter. We are over at Omega Metroid Pod, over at Spiteri316, over at Dak City _, and you can check us out over on OmegaMetroid.com, where we have all of these episodes, every single one that we've ever done, detailed and listed there, plus guides, plus maps, plus other stuff. So go check it out. We also have a Patreon where we can you can really take your Omega Metroid love to the next level. We got a monthly show that's been ongoing for last year. Great Metroid area ranking. We actually did our first Federation Force area the other day, which was went exactly as you probably thought it would.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, so that was nice and fun. And of course, if you want to see our smiling faces as we do these shows, go check out our YouTube channel. Doominal has been doing a lot of really good work over there and putting in a lot of time. So go and check it out and throw us a subscription over there. That'd be pretty cool. That said, my friends, that is it. Of course, we are going to encourage you to check us out wherever you get your podcasts and all that kind of fun stuff. You rate, you like, you recommend, you subscribe, all that stuff. Hey, you got a Metroid fan in your life? There is one, I repeat, one weekly Metroid podcast. So let them know what we're doing over here. Until next week, everybody, have an awesome week, and I guess I'll see you guys in 2 weeks. So until then, my friends, take care.